Instrument training is a beast. It feels like I'm learning things all over again. I learned my private pilot license, and that in and of itself was just a different language. And instrument just feels like a whole nother language that I'm trying to learn.
Oh, what a stroke of luck.
All right. It's been a while since I've given a little training update. My last update, I believe I was probably still at Liberty University. I don't think I had my private pilot license yet. And Liberty University had just been going through that whole saga in which they weren't accepting the GI Bill anymore. The VA had suspended funding, which I do believe that still is the case. At least if you're trying to go to any sort of online training with Liberty University and then go through an FTA. I believe if you're in person in Virginia at the university, that the VA will fund it there. However, anywhere else, that funding is not going to happen. Since leaving Liberty, I got my private pilot license, and now I'm at a different university, and it is just a night and day difference to the training that I had for my private pilot license with Liberty University. Just night and day. Like, the facilities are better, the training is better, the planes are better. I mean, we got some like brand new airplanes, 2023, 2024 Cessna 172s. It's nice to have equipment that's new and avionics system that's new. And just facilities that are nicer. Just like the training facilities, the sims are better. The people seem happier there. The instructors seem happier there. And it's good. It's nice to be at a facility that I think is worth the money. I look back at Liberty University and the training that I went through with them through an FTA in Arizona, and yes, I did get my private pilot license out of it, but was all the money that I paid worth it? I mean, I got my private pilot license, but could I have gone somewhere better? Yeah, I definitely could have. And now that I'm here, I'm very thankful and happy to have found a better place to train at. I started my instrument training this summer, I believe around June, so it's been about 5 months, probably about 65 to 70% of the way through my instrument training. I'm really hoping that I can get it done, by December time. It would kind of be nice to be able to go on the holiday break and have instrument out of the way, but we'll see with the check ride weight and everything like that. It's not all really up to me, and that from things that I've read and just hearing from seasoned veterans in the aviation industry, that's just how aviation is sometimes. Not everything's always up to you. So instrument training, so starting out, man, it was really just like learning another language. Like, private pilot license was its own language in itself. And especially if I had no experience whatsoever in aviation, didn't have any family members in aviation, had no past careers in aviation, did work in supply chain in the past, but that had nothing to do with flying. So coming into my private pilot license, literally it was like I was trying to learn another language. It felt like trying to learn Spanish when I was living in Colombia back in the day. It felt like that. All the things that I was having to learn, learning how to read maps, navigation, learning about systems, aerodynamics, so many different things. And it's not that one thing is difficult, it's just the conglomeration of things that I was trying to learn is just so much. Instrument feels literally the same thing. It feels like, okay, I've learned this private pilot language the basic language that you need to be able to fly a plane. And now I'm learning this whole new language of how to fly in the clouds, how to talk to ATC more, how to do these instrument approach procedures, non-precision, precision. You're learning, more about avionics systems. It just is just completely new. And coming into it, I would say the first 2 months felt a lot like my private pilot license in that it was just kind of overwhelming. I was learning so much, and the first few months of it, you're trying to just find a foothold, basically. You learn a few things, you find a little hold, and then you keep on moving up, and then the dark room that you're in gets a little bit brighter as you learn a little bit more, and then eventually you find more footholds, and it seems a little less complicated. And that's really how it's been in my experience for instrument. Just relearning another language in the plane. In that language, in that learning process, the hardest thing for me, I don't think that there's been one thing about instrument training that's super difficult. There's not one thing that is, impossible to do or impossible to learn. What my experience has felt like is it's the culmination of everything. It's all these things that you're trying to put together in the plane. You're trying to fly the plane while also trying to talk to ATC and listen to their instructions, while also briefing this approach, doing my checklist, and taking this approach all the way in, not busting minimums, and landing. It's adding all of these things together and multitasking. Learning how to multitask in the plane has been probably one of the most difficult things for me to learn. Not only do I have to be focused on the plane itself, flying, aviating, but also worried about, let's just say, navigating. And that just makes things so much more difficult to aviate, especially when I'm a brand new pilot, still learning how to fly. When you get your private pilot license, yeah, you know how to fly, but you're still learning how to fly, if that makes sense. And now you're adding on top all of these things that I'm learning how to do in the aircraft, and pairing that with still learning how to fly. That's what's been the most difficult is multitasking. Multitasking on top of just straight up talking to ATC, I think that's a hang-up point for a lot of people, is just getting comfortable with them and kind of realizing that ATC is there to help you. I definitely have realized that the more I fly instrument, is ATC's there to help you. They're not there to yell at you or make your day, more difficult. They're literally just there to help you. The other big thing I would say that I've experienced while going through instrument is, it's just sim brain, just being in the sim so much and just feeling like, what the hell am I doing? Flying in the sim so much, you get sim brain, just doing instrument approaches over and over and over again, and you're flying less during that first stage because you're learning how to do precision approaches, non-precision approaches, DME arcs. You're learning all these things individually, and then you're learning how to string them all together. And it's good that I'm learning this in the sim because it saves a lot of time in the plane, right? And then makes my flying more efficient in the plane when that time comes. But just day after day in the sim just becomes monotonous, and it becomes to feel just like a sim pilot, just like that's just what you're there for. And it takes a little bit of the joy out of it when you're not flying as much, because that's that's the part that we all enjoy about flying, that I enjoy about flying, is that you're flying. You're flying this plane. And when you're in the sim, you kind of just feel like a dud. A little bit, like just flying this little computer around. And what I've learned, what has helped me with that is, one, just being a little bit patient with myself. Coming from a person that, can be hard on themselves and expects the best every time. I've had so many different sim sessions where they've felt like a failure. They probably were a failure, but that's the process of learning. I just learned that that's going to be part of it. To take it easy on myself a little bit more in those times when I'm in the sim and it is becoming monotonous and maybe I'm not having the best day, to realize that I'm still learning and I'm only a few months into this. It's like natural that you're not going to be good at it right away. It's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of practice, but the more that you do it, it all just kind of comes together and starts to snowball. And what has also helped is just taking breaks and going and flying every so often, and not just staying headstrong like, no, I want to get through this sim stuff first and just have that past me. That's a great mentality to have, but it kind of hurts. I've learned that kind of hurt me in a way, because I was enjoying the training less and less and less as I just was committed to the sim. But as I started taking a flight more here and there just to break up the monotony of the sim, I found that I was a little bit happier and a little bit more accepting to go into the sim training, just because, I had that flight. I had something to break up the monotony. I had an instance where I was actually using the stuff that I was learning in the sim, because just over and over in the sim, just training in there, one, you're not talking to ATC, so you don't have that experience, so it is good to get into the plane to do that. But two, it just feels like after a while, I was like, what am I doing this for? Like, what's the purpose of this? And then once you get into the plane and you're actually able to do that in real time, it's kind of like a light switch, like, okay, all right, this is why I'm doing it. This is what this is for. All right, let's keep on the straight and narrow here and finish her out. So that's been something that I've implemented in the last month, is just trying to go on a flight, around once a week, at the most once every 2 weeks, just to break up that monotony of being in the sim over and over and over. Lastly, I would say the most difficult singular thing for me, as far as the actual flying portion of it, has been partial panel. Woo! Oh my gosh, that's a beast. Seriously. It's like, already, you're coming into it and you don't, I don't know the instrument stuff that well. You're learning the instrument stuff. And then you're taking away your avionics and your primary instruments. You're having to look at your backup instruments. So you're having to concentrate on aviating a little bit more. And then also you're having to navigate a little bit. You're having to focus on navigation a little bit more as well once you lose, say, your ADC and your AHRS, because now you're having to use your magnetic compass, which makes everything a little bit more difficult, because we have our compass errors, and then that's just another thing that you're adding to it. So then when you're learning, when you're turning to the north and you're like, oh man, I way missed that. And the same thing when you turn to the south, and it's felt like it's just this compounding effect once you go partial panel, that you're having to focus so much more on flying and then also on navigating. And I think that's what's made it just one of the most difficult things. When you have, your PFD up completely, your ADC and your AHRS is functioning, it makes things a lot easier to have those displays right in front of you. And then when those are taken away, it really makes things a lot more difficult. A lot more difficult. I think that has definitely been the singular most difficult thing. If I would, just silo every individual thing and say what is the most difficult, I think that by far is probably the most difficult thing in and of itself. But just the training as a whole, just getting into the plane and going on an IFR flight with everything you have to do, everything you have to remember, stay ahead of the plane, follow your procedures, follow what ATC says. That is the most difficult thing, for sure. Just everything put together. It's not one thing, it's just everything. If that, I don't know if that makes it sound better. If that would give anybody listening to this getting ready to go into their instrument training, if that helps you out at all. There's no one thing that's the most difficult. It's just everything. But like I said, I'm chugging along. I hope to have this completed by wintertime. I wish anybody who's getting into their instrument training the best of luck. And any advice I would have is I would say just be patient and it'll come. Just like your private pilot license, you learn that information, you learned how to fly the plane, and now you're going to learn another language. It just takes a little bit to find some footholds, to turn on some lights, and realize that you're not in the darkness anymore. But it'll come, and just have patience with yourself, and you'll get it.